Welcome to Browngrotta Art's ninth Zoom exhibition and our seventh episode of Art on the Rocks, an exhibition talk through with spirits. As many of you know, I'm Rhonda Brown, and for 30 plus years, my husband Tom Grotta and I have been promoting the work of dozens of international contemporary artists. For our Art in the Barn exhibition this spring, we curated a wide-ranging exhibition, Field Notes, an art survey. We've chosen several images from Field Notes and a few about its inspiration. I'll speak about each no longer than a minute. We're presenting from the podcast studio at Space 67 Studios in Norwalk, Connecticut. Field Notes featured 48 artists from 18 countries. We'll be exhibiting more images than usual in this presentation, but if you want to see even more, including images and details, and read the artist's thoughts about their work, there is a catalog you can order from our website. There's a video on our YouTube channel. You will also find all the artworks from Field Notes in a series of viewing rooms on our website, arranged by gallery. We've placed everyone on mute and turned off the cameras while we watch the slides. We'll introduce a drink, a watermelon cooler. The drink was researched by our talented in-house mixologist, Max Fanwick. You can learn more about Max's libations and culinary creations at Run, Cook, Sleep, Repeat. Here's a visual how-to.
Today on Art on the Rocks, we're going to be making a watermelon cooler. It's a great blended frozen drink featuring fresh lime juice with a basil simple syrup, blended frozen watermelon, some white rum, and a little bit of Suze. Adds a little bit of herbaceousness, a little bitterness to cut through the sweetness. Great summer drink, and is a great batch cocktail made in your blender. So we're going to start by making our basil and lime simple syrup. We're going to take our limes and we're just going to grate them with a microplane to get the zest. We're going to add the zest of the limes and the basil leaves into the sugar. When you add citrus zest into sugar, it's going to pull the oil out of the herbs and the zest of the citrus. So what you're going to want to do is take your citrus zest and put it in there. And then we're going to take our basil. We've just rinsed our basil off. We're just going to try and get rid of some of those stemmy bits. They can be a little bitter, don't really add much. And we're actually not going to add the water for now. We don't want to dilute it. A little bit of lime zest, a little bit of basil. And then what we're going to do is just shake it up to get the zest and the basil into the sugar. And then just come at it and give it a little crush. And once you have that leaf nicely broken up, once you see that there's not as many chunks in there, at that point, you're just gonna have to give it some time. So just set and forget. Give it 15 or 20 minutes, and then you can come back. A key ingredient in this cocktail is frozen watermelon. By freezing the watermelon ahead of time, it allows us to have a drink that isn't diluted by a bunch of ice, and it's just adding flavor. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our watermelon, we're gonna cut it into chunks, and then we're gonna throw it in the freezer for a few hours to harden up. We're now gonna strain out our simple syrup just to get out the basil and the lime zest. We're now gonna take the limes that we zested earlier and use them to make the juice. We're going to use 2 limes to get 1 pitcher full of final product. We're now ready to assemble our cocktail. It's really to make it to blend it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking our watermelon, most of our watermelon, and dumping it right in. We are going to top this off with just a little bit of ice on the rim. Just a handful of ice to keep everything cold. We're going to go in with just a splash or 2 of our basil and lime simple syrup. We're going to add in our lime juice. And we're going to go in with 8 ounces of silver rum. And it's going to make about 4 drinks. So it's about 2 ounces per drink and about an ounce and a half of Suze. So this is going to give it a really nice herbaceousness, but we don't want it to be a super forward flavor in this cocktail. So we're not going to go over the top with that. You just want to blend until smooth. If it's a little too watery, you can add a little bit more ice, and I'm going to throw a couple ice cubes in. But you're really just going for the consistency that you're looking for. To finish the cocktail, we're going to garnish it with a little bit of watermelon and lime. So we're just going to take our lime, and we're just going to quarter it. We're just going to take our glasses, fill it right to the brim with some drink. Put our lime. And then a piece of watermelon. That's our watermelon cooler.
And I can attest that it's delicious. Now to the talk through. Periodically, Browngrotta Arts conducts a wide-ranging survey of the contemporary fiber art field. As part of this exploration, we reconnect with artists we represent to learn what's currently inspiring their creative process, what's on their minds, on their looms, and in their studios. We also look outward, exploring what other artists are creating and inviting some of those whose work we believe deserves wider recognition to participate. Here are 6 that we invited this year. And to provide valuable context on where fiber art has been and where it's headed, we include select works by trailblazers like Sheila Hicks, who have been instrumental in shaping the field. These are the directions we explored to compile field notes, Browngrotta Art's snapshot of the current state of the fiber art field. This is an exciting time to make these observations. Fiber art stock is on the rise. Art in America has dubbed it the new painting, while Glenn Adamson, writing for that magazine, proclaimed 2024 the year of the art world's high fiber diet. Meanwhile, Artsy identified fiber art as a trend poised to take hold across the contemporary art world in 2025. This surge in popularity began with the Boston ICA exhibition Fiber Sculpture 1960 to the Present at the Institute of Contemporary Art in Boston in 2014. Since then, a number of textile-focused exhibitions have opened across the US, Asia, and Europe. Most recently, the expansive exhibition Woven Histories, Textiles and Modern Abstraction has traveled from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., then to Canada, and now to the Museum of Modern Art in New York, where it will be on view through September 13th, 2025. This is an image from the DC version, which we visited in May 2024. We haven't seen the exhibition in New York yet, but we understand it differs, as MoMA has replaced some works from the traveling exhibition with ones from its permanent collection. A significant book was published to accompany the exhibition. You can order a copy online on our website. The reemergence of fiber arts over the past decade does not surprise us. As Glenn Adamson noted in Art in America, textiles offer much of what the art world wants right now: underexplored histories, personal narrative, material intelligence, and demographic diversity. Field Notes includes work that brings these themes and others into focus. In this image are works by artists from Korea, the Netherlands, and the US, who range in age from the early 40s to nearly 90. Many of the work in Field Notes meet more than one of Adamson's categories. Nonetheless, for purposes of our talk through, I've placed each into one theme: narratives, material exploration, form and structure, through lines, and historic reference. Evident in several of the works in Field Notes and artist statements about them are compelling stories of where these artists find themselves now. They illustrate current personal narratives and, in some cases, visions for a hopeful future. Anxiety stokes the seemingly lovely weavings of American artist Laura Foster Nicholson. The images in her Shed series spring from concern about the environment. The farms, which seem so evocatively beautiful, she says, are contributing radically to climate change. Wendy Wall also channels the unease of current events directly into her art. In November, my mantra became, "What the F?" she says. It feels appropriate in many situations these days. In Morse code, she encodes this sentiment using scrolls of maps, indices, and text paper arranged in the pattern of her new mantra, hidden in plain sight through Morse code. A widespread sense of discomfort is also a concern of Anique Klein, but she offers a vision rooted in optimism. Her work, Prospects for Hope, reflects this belief, encouraging viewers to see that after darkness, new perspectives will emerge. Norma Minkowitz's work, The One That Got Away, grapples with the weight of global tragedy, the horrors and cruelty of the mass murders of civilians on 9/11, and then the October 7th massacre in Israel. Despite the horror, like Klein, she incorporates a flicker of hope into her work, a figure that floats toward the surface, symbolizing the possibility of escape and rewriting the narrative. Carol Sisson says she continues to follow where her materials take her and looks for meaningful connections, both figuratively and literally. She is fearful and deeply disappointed that freedom of expression is being attacked. How I respond artistically is still evolving, she says. One of the artists new to Browngrotta Arts, Misako Nakahira of Japan, also reacts to present-day angst, but she envisions improvements in the offing. Stripes are typically seen as parallel lines that never intersect, symbolizing infinity, Nakahira explains. But during the COVID-19 pandemic, I was struck by how people maintained a sense of order in their lives while occasionally clashing. She wanted to represent this dynamic through stripes. She imagines a future where such challenging circumstances would not last forever. The stripes in her towel series feature deliberate distortions and overlaps, representing both the tension and resilience of that time. In these works by Irina Kolnoskova, her alter ego appears. She calls him her little man, and the works reflect their inner and outer lives. He is still unsure of himself and his abilities, she says. It seems to him that someone important and in charge controls his destiny, especially as the situation around him seems chaotic. Should he step forward and free himself from the dictate, or stay where he is and wait for things to resolve themselves somehow? It is this moment of uncertainty Kolnoskova wants to reflect. What are the influences behind Cat's Eyes? KG Neo has tried to capture the moment when he suddenly feels a gaze and turns his eyes and sometimes finds a cat staring intently at him. Especially quiet cat, he says, who do not meow much, often keep their expression unchanged, gazing without blinking, as if trying to convey something unknowable. He captured these feelings on the canvas, framed by aramid fiber and surrounded by sand. These imaginative works of fiber artwork pioneer Ed Rosbach always have a point of view. Rosbach is known for incorporating unconventional imagery, including pop culture references. Punt, one of Rosbach's pop culture-inspired works, features a brightly colored football kicker. Poncho and Wyoming showcase intriguing motifs, drawing on South American textile patterns and gravel from the American West. Many of the artists promoted by Browngrotta Arts are consumed by the physical properties of textile materials and the seemingly infinite ways they can be employed. Fiber is the most appropriate material for my artwork because of its multidimensional perspective, physical characteristics, psychological stability, cultural nostalgia, and its ability to capture both sight and touch, says Sangrim Park of Korea. Park creates striking works of knotted paper, another artist new to Browngrotta Arts. In 2012, Stephanie Jacques lived in a small village when she saw a technician from the telecom company installing cables in a terminal across the street. These wire cables she thought would make fantastic braiding material. She crossed the street and asked the man how she could get some. He slides the open door of his van, and dozens of reels of the precious cable appeared. He handed her one, saying, "It's for you. Please keep it a secret." She was over the moon, able to experiment with new braiding stitches, and created a first dress in looping. That shape kept her busy for some time. All these years later, the telecom company no longer uses the cable. Jacques has a few reels left of this nearly extinct material, just enough to take this series of triptychs to its conclusion. The stitch Jacques uses dates to before knitting needles were invented in the Middle Ages. For Marian Kemp, the material of her obsession is horsehair. In Floating Upstream, she explored how horizontal and vertical reference lines fade into the background when coupled with random nodding of horsehair, which shifts the viewer's focus. She found the interplay of overlapping textures and translucency key to softening the otherwise bold composition. The single horizontal line formed by the wooden dowel brings balance to the piece. In these works, Greta Whitrock has transformed recycled sails into colorful wings as an homage to Issey Miyake and his Pleats Please clothes collection. Pleats also interests Mia Olsen, who often works with themes and series. Her pleating series is an example. The pleats in sisal work well with the light, which influences both color and form in ways she finds fascinating. This effect is especially pronounced when working with nearly monochromatic palettes. For 28 years, Naoko Sereno has been creating artworks using only jute. I am grateful to be able to convey the charm of jute through my hands, she says. She pours her feelings into the artworks, allowing them to speak through the material. Beba Oside has fused two distinct waste materials into her works on canvas: pieces of wood washed up on a beach and plastic bags. The synthesis between her creative process, her engagement with the material, and the underlying concept forms a protest against the environmental disasters caused by climate change, specifically the floods that she has experienced last summer in her home in Latvia. Her work is a call for the detoxification of the planet from waste. The late Elijah Rage ennobled humble bamboo dowels in her exploration of textile technique. She transcended the mechanical to evoke what she called a profound sermon, a mystique where each thread, metal shard, or sliver of wood discovers its unique place, contributing to an emotionally charged entirety. She said that this work, completed in February just before her death, resonated deeply with the contemporary global landscape, particularly in Europe, urging us to confront the decisive path shaping our collective future. Asa Leonis looks for the shimmer, the light, and the stillness within movement, the elements that emerge through the composition of her works. She embroiders by hand on linen fabric using sulky viscose thread to achieve this effect. This particular thread brings a vivid glow and luster to the work, she says. Under varying light conditions, the image is in constant flux. As a viewer, you must move to fully see and experience these subtle shifts. For Kari Lomini, the material on which she is focused is akebia. She discovered it 10 years ago by tripping over the vines in the woods. Although akebia vines are considered an invasive nuisance in Connecticut where she lives, they are a nearly perfect medium for weaving. Though akebia vines grow much faster than Loning can collect them, she says she pretends that she's doing the woods a service by harvesting them. No machines are used, no shipping is involved, no waste is generated. She makes art from a destructive material that no one wants. In that way, she says, bad vines make good baskets. Paper is a material often used by fiber artists with very distinctive results. Pat Campbell's work is constructed of paper modules that form a configuration hanging on two levels. She usually works in all white Gampi paper. Here, she experimented by adding black lines to the rice paper, an experiment she says she may continue. For the past 18 years, Jennifer Linson has investigated the structural formation of knots as sculpture in hand-carved paper and aluminum. For her, knots, loose, tight, complex, or seemingly random, communicate metaphors for life. During this recent model-making session, the action of weaving the structure of the knot, in, out, up, and down, suggested the darting, gliding, hovering, and swooping movements of swallows in flight. In this piece, she worked to emphasize this darting and gliding movement, not only in structure, but in pigment brushstrokes and the carved pattern of flying birds. Paper is also the basis for Noriko Takamaya's work. The results of her efforts very different from Campbell and Linson. In her work, she says the use of materials and the exploration of basketry techniques are fundamental. Wood is another material, as branches, bark, structure, that lends itself to myriad interpretations. Ginge Locke is deeply moved by what she has learned about trees, her primary art material, so much so that she now capitalizes the names of trees out of respect for their vital role on Earth. Lakey points out that the 2020 UN Environment Program report, The State of the World's Forests, reveals that deforestation is occurring at nearly 25 million acres per year. How many more years can we lose trees at this rate, she asks, before we no longer have enough for our species to survive? Recently, Lakey worked with ash. She found herself continually sensing the nodes and branches as suggestive of human anatomy. A friend commented that it looked like a heart. Heartwood was the result. In Noise at Midnight, Lockie worked with toothpicks. These are customarily made of birch. Willow is another wood that often captures these artists' imaginations. In field notes, we found 4 artists using willow in very different ways. And Linsgaard says, initially, it was the willow that captivated me, followed by other organic materials. And now it is whatever the eye discovers and the hands shape. I am always drawn to new materials and how I can alter the perception of these materials, exploring the expressions they can take. Organic Basket is made of willow, willow bark, and fibercrete. Lizzie Ferry grew up surrounded by countryside. In rural Scotland, she developed a deep love and fascination for woodlands, coastal paths, and remote places. Natural forms provide the basis and inspiration for her work. She seeks to immerse the viewer in that landscape and environment where she lives. Ferry primarily uses willow. The resilience and flexibility of the willow teaches me to adapt in the face of challenges and changing circumstances, she says. Bending with the wind can represent the idea of aligning oneself with the natural flow of life rather than opposing it. 3 Circles is a willow work by Christine Joy. It started as a vessel, but then she saw it in a different way, not lying flat like a bowl, but standing. In its final form, the interweaving and more structure are revealed. 3 Circles also reflects Joy's preoccupation with the shape of waves and water movement. Willow bark is used in Nobody's Perfect, Random Thoughts, and Entwine number 4 from Jennifer Zurich's Woven Pot series. She says her hands guide, but are never in complete control of the willow bark's own expression. Zurich is another artist new to Browngrotta Arts. Cedar bark is Polly Sutton's material. In creating this work, she was on a search for the rim. How does one know when to finally put the rim on the basket? She asked, a problem she clearly solved. Other artists in field notes are immersed in pushing technical boundaries, manipulating material to reveal new forms and structures. In Totems, made with optical fiber, Wilmiret Saigon of Poland explores the emotional resonance implied by converging warp threads, an idea influenced using perspective in Renaissance painting. The simple logic of the composition and traditional raw materials allowed me to build, using the simplest weaving system, a method intriguing with its internal rhythm and energy, he explains. The integration of changing light via optical fiber transformed this modest woven piece into a mesmerizing meditative object. Structure and material also drive the practice of Youngju Kim, another of the artists new to Browngrotta Arts. Kim experiments with hook and loop fasteners, a unique and unconventional material, cutting them into pieces and assembling them into a fabric of sorts. She then applies pressure to the fabric manually, altering the shape by hanging and rotating the pieces on the wall. Dimensional sculptures marked by chasms and eruptions are the result, evoking the beauty, force, and vitality found in natural phenomena like oceans, volcanoes, and canyons. I hope this work is seen not merely as a sculptural object, Kim says, but also as a symbol of resilience, beauty, and the transformation of struggle into creation. Masakazu Kobayashi was an early actor in the contemporary fiber art movement. Bow 86, featured here, is made of silk, rayon, aluminum, and wooden thread spools. The work reflects Kobayashi's exploration of the bow, a shape he created by bending aluminum rods into bow shapes and holding their tension with silk thread. The bow explorations embody the equilibrium he sought in his work between his capacity as a creator and the energy of the world around him. The work of Rachel Max is heavily rooted in ideas of time and space. For several years, Max has been exploring forms that symbolize infinity. The Mobius loop and figure 8, both steeped in metaphorical associations, have become her starting point. Rift explores the relationship between interior and exterior space. Edges that are almost touching suddenly split apart. The crack that emerges interrupts the service and casts doubt on whether this is a never-ending form. Hisako Sekijima discovered Mexican coarse cloth made with a basic weaving technique using a continuous strand and became fascinated with its potential for more intricate constructions. She built her own weaving board and using Rami fibers grown in her garden, created a series of stacked mats. This new method, Sekijima says, reversed my prefixed judgments about weaving and made me reconsider the relationship between fabrication method and material form. Mixed Signals by Blair Tate is created by using 2 scales of weave and weft rope cords, punctuated with double woven casings in separately woven strips. These casings and cords create the scaffold for attaching and hanging. They enable off-loom freedom to play, to revise, rearrange, and eliminate components. She sees these strips as independent sentences with punctuating patterns. Grouping these patterns produces local compositions, phrases of a sort. Rearranging these elements creates rhythms to establish affinities across a field. For Federica Luzzi, introspection is an essential part of her structural explorations. During COVID, she wove a large winged seed on a vertical loom and exhibited first in Rome, then in Osaka. From this large mother seed, smaller fabrics were born. Having landed far away from me in Japan and now in America, she says, they represent a mobile universe, forming a vital connection between the inner and outer world. The seed, once closed upon itself, becomes an open layer, something immaterial that permeates the transient, casting a nostalgic vision of simultaneous states in the passage of time. Sophie Rowley, another artist whose work is new to Browngrotta Arts. In her work, she evolves around deconstruction and challenging received ideas. She views deconstruction not merely as a visual or formal technique that she employs, she thinks of it in a broader sense, as a way to explore what lies between the material and the discursive. How do internal perceptions manifest in tangible form? What new insights emerge through the process of undoing? Generally, when Gudrun Pagder sets out to weave a work, everything is predetermined. Not so in Four Small Weaving Tapestries. They represent a kind of thinking pause where nothing was planned in advance. Nevertheless, rules soon emerged, spacing between the inserted stripes, intervals between jumps, subtle variations in the black background to create a visual system, a kind of vertical structure that brings relief and rhythm, a pattern that suggests continuation yet forms a complete composition in itself. Chat by Jiro Yanazawa is a series of works created to express conversation, communication, the acts of conveying feelings, and of capturing the atmosphere of these interactions. He has returned to this series, which he began a few years ago, because in today's world, he sees conflicts and various troubles increasing. I feel that genuine communication between people is becoming less frequent. This led me to visit this series once again, hoping that viewers can sense the atmosphere of dialogue and connection. Yanazawa's Dance of the Sash series was inspired by traditional Kagura dance in Japan. It's based on the Tsuki no Mai, a type of sash worn to keep kimono sleeves out of the way when moving. Made from either cloth or cord, it loops over each shoulder and crosses over the wearer's back. The bottom of the kimono sleeves can then be tucked into the loop, holding them back for convenience. He says there is a legend about Amaterasu, the sun goddess, hiding in a cave and throwing the world into darkness. She was eventually lured out by dancing and the laughter of other gods. Kagura dances in Oita and Miyazaki Prefecture enact this legend. The sculptural vessa by Gisela Warburton explores inner space in relation to outer skins, becoming anthropomorphic and totemic in expression and detail. As the years pass, she says, she senses ever more keenly the ancient human animal in the shared ground of time and relationship to place and across all the climate and cultural diversity of the earth. In these unsettling times, the tactical intimacy and resonance of the slow rhythms of making that engage the hand and mind become ever more precious. Despite demographic diversity involving 4 continents, throughout the works and field notes, we found fascinating through lines. Threads from fiber art's origins emerge in works that reflect its evolving future. Artists from different generations and geographies share influences and approaches. Sheila Hicks studied painting with Joseph Albers at Yale University in the 50s. His book, The Interaction of Color, heralded new approaches to the study of color, and the approach left a lasting impact on her work. This is a detail from Alphabet Tapestry, which we exhibited in an earlier exhibition. Eduardo Portilla and Maria Davila, born 30 years after Hicks, completed a residency at the Joseph and Annie Albers Foundation in Connecticut in 2018. They too cite the Albers as artistic influences. In 2025, California artist James Bassler, who is 92, returned to Joseph Albers' teachings, which have informed his practice for decades. He was first introduced to them in a color class at UCLA in the 1960s. We used paints and lots of mixing. This was, of course, pre-electronics, he recalls. Bassler would later go on to teach Albers' color theories to students at UCLA for 25 years. In his recent work, The Yarns I Have Carried, he draws attention to the complexity of color mixing with yarn, using yarns he's collected over a period of years. Field notes included work by pioneering artists whose contributions were crucial to the evolution of the contemporary art textiles, offering insight into the movement's early experimental and innovative phases and hinting at its future direction. Among them is Kei Sekamachi, born in 1926, who studied under Bauhaus-trained weaver Trude Germonprez in the 1950s, when she first took up the loom. Works from that formative period are featured here. Sekamachi is perhaps best known for three-dimensional forms woven from nylon monofilament, a material developed by DuPont shortly before she began to use it for art. These pieces consist of interlocking layers that, when suspended, unfold into cascading shapes that suggest organic forms. Similarly evocative, though differently executed, are Shoko Fukuda's undulating sculptures of white rami. Born 50 years after Sekamachi, Fukuda's experiments also focus on creating sculptural pieces by connecting woven parts and utilizing the structure of lines to highlight the organic movement of curves. Canadian artist Mariette Rousseau-Vermette, also born in 1926, worked with renowned designer Dorothy Levis in her California studio during the 1950s, just after Rousseau-Vermette finished art school in Quebec. In the small and interconnected world category, Rousseau-Vermette also met Kei Sekamachi while she was in California. Levis and Rousseau-Vermette shared a passion for vivid and unexpected color combinations, a quality that resonates in Rousseau-Vermette's Reflet de Montreal, woven in 1968. A love of color is also reflected in the work of American artist Polly Barton, born in 1956, and Indian artist Neha Puri Deer, born in 1982. In No Strings Attached, Barton explores color through a variety of media: dye, pigment, pastel, and ink, creating a tactile surface that bridges the painted and the woven. I weave the liminal space between a painted surface and a woven structure, she says. Deer, in describing her piece, Shifting Horizons, reflects, I have painted the silk with earthy colors, gentle teals for my quiet unease, warm yellows for a flicker of hope, and soft pinks for the tender ache in my heart, capturing a shift I feel but cannot see, like a storm brewing beyond the horizon. Color features in Carolyn Bartlett's work Juncture 2. The language of textiles speaks of entanglements and connectivity, she says, of continuity and severance, and pink might be considered as a field for nurture. Blocks of intersecting color are revealed through a manipulated surface and hold firm with concepts of control. Simultaneously, they become squeezed and threads displaced as notions of old certainties and understandings fall away. The whole becomes a metaphor for the personal or for the wider social, ecological, and political spheres. Textile traditions, deeply researched, skillfully mastered, and serving as a foundation for innovation, often feature in the work of the artists in field notes. For several years, Korean artist Jin Suk-so, who also lives in Sweden, has chosen stainless steel mesh as her medium. She values its unique ability to suggest the softness of fabric, diffuse light, and accept color and electroplating. In her current work, she draws inspiration from jacobo, a traditional Korean patchwork technique in which fabric scraps are pieced together to form larger cloths and women's garments. What I have created by combining my leftover materials references this heritage, she explains, reimagined through contemporary materials and surface treatments, metal transformed into a textured, expressive surface. British artist Susie Gillespie also looks to the past. She has an interest in archaeology and fascination with early textiles. The work featured in Field Notes was made of homegrown hand-spun linen, antique linen yarn, embroidery thread, beeswax, gesso, and oak tannin. Titled Linen Tunic, it was inspired by the linen tunics the Egyptian Copts wore. These surviving textiles give me a sense of the people who made them, Gillespie says, processing bast fibers into yarn and spending many hours at the loom. Abby Mackey, who lives in Spain, admits to being deeply inspired by the interplay of tradition and innovation. By blending what she describes as the tactile intimacy of textile techniques with the boldness of fine art materials, her work invites new perspectives of the familiar and celebrates the beauty of reinvention. The history and texture of each object informs the narrative of the work. In Mackey's series, All Is Not Lost, she unravels the fibers of an old Hessian carpet to create a visual dialogue between destruction and regeneration, transforming a humble material into a potent symbol of endurance. Young-Ok Shin has been interested in Hansan Mosi, a natural fiber, since the early 1980s. Hansan Mosi is a traditional Korean fiber that was registered by UNESCO as an element of intangible cultural heritage in 2011. Shin wants to explore the feeling of this traditional fabric and create work that restores humanity from tradition. All artists should challenge the existing framework by pursuing their creative path more honestly as conscious artists, Shin says. Since the 1980s, she's been exploring Korean traditions and folklore. I want to express the power passed down from tradition as work full of vitality that is given meaning rather than innovation, she says. In Field Notes, we surveyed the work of artists from different generations and world regions, each with their own approaches and influences, passions, and practices. Our conclusion, fiber art remains a powerful medium for storytelling and ingenuity. Our recommendation, observe it for yourself, ask your own questions, draw your own conclusions, and above all, enjoy examining this medium in ascendance. That ends our whirlwind presentation. Thank you for joining us. For more images of the works, replete with no end of ideas, check our video and viewing rooms. Thanks again to Max, Eat, Cook, Run, Sleep, Repeat, and to our teams at Juice Creative and Space 67, Wilson Beltran, Mike Kelleher, Guzman Gonzalez, Carter Grotta, and Mike Propercy, who have provided technical and email assistance. For more information and images, you can order the catalog, Field Notes and Art Survey at browngrotta.com. Save the date for our fall exhibition, which will be in October, theme to be determined. And here are the promised resources for finding exhibitions, viewing rooms, the book, and our YouTube video, as well as Space 67, and our mixologist, Max Vanwick. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you again in the fall.